Hey everybody, welcome into Redacted on this Tuesday. I'm Clayton Morris.
I'm Natalie Morris.
And we have a very busy show for you today. On this show, we tend to cover the stories the mainstream media largely ignores, or at least cut through all of the propaganda and the spin on a lot of these stories. And we do not have a side. We're not pro-Democrat, pro-Republican. We are independent. So glad to have all of you here joining us on this Tuesday. So we're going to talk about this big cover-up and Kamala Harris being set the stage to replace Joe Biden right now. Donald Trump's campaign actively working to prepare for a Kamala Harris candidacy on the ticket in 2024 as this election unfolds. We're going to detail the very latest developments over the past couple of hours on that front.
Plus, the NATO summit is kicking off in Washington, D.C. right this minute as we speak, and they are using a new attack in Kiev. We don't know who did it at this point. We do know they will use it in order to sell you more war in Ukraine using your money. We're going to break down what we know about this at this hour.
Also, did globalists actually win in France? Are we were supposed to have like a bit of a red wave that was supposed to be hitting across Europe, you know, a right-wing resurgence, down with the globalists. But like, what the heck just happened in France? What the heck just happened in the UK just a short time ago? And are globalists resurgent throughout Europe? We're going to talk about all of that and more as Redacted starts right now. So good to see all of you guys. Thank you guys for joining us. Yes, we've been working. Here's our new set that we've been dialing it in, tweaking things. We are not a multi-million-dollar company, so we've been like dialing in a whole bunch of things. Philip and David and the whole team have been on the back end trying to get all the production up and running, and Grim building all of our new graphics behind us here and everything. So good to see all of you. We've got our chat room up and running on both sides here, so we can see the chat even better, which is great.
Yeah, we're glad to be back with you. Our first show back in the studio was yesterday. Today's our second show. Hopefully we got out a little of the kinks. We saw and heard what you thought of the new studio. We appreciate your feedback very much. We also warn you that it is summertime and we're broadcasting live from, let's see, the dog days of summer, I suppose you would call it.
Yeah, it is. It's brutally hot right now. So
with children home from school, all of that, but we're working. We hope you're here to join us. Go ahead. Oh, okay. Well,
we apologize.
You can be in a bikini if you want, since you never turn on your camera.
Yeah, exactly. So good to see all of you guys. Let us know where you're joining us from here. I'm looking at the chat room here. We're streaming live on YouTube, streaming live on X, streaming live on Rumble. So good to see all of you guys. We'll get to that in a minute. So we've got a lot of news to get to here on your Tuesday, and we're going to start with the deep state coup in full effect. But first,
we want to tell you about Policy Genius, who is sponsoring our show today, and we really appreciate it. Policy Genius is a great place to start when you're shopping for any insurance policy. Life insurance is one that maybe you want to look into if you haven't already. But seriously, Policy Genius, even if you already have an insurance plan and you're pretty sure you're paying bottom rates, top dollar for bottom rates, then you can shop whatever you want at Policy Genius: auto, renters, home insurance, and of course life insurance, because you want to have peace of mind that should something happen to you, that your family would be taken care of. So Policy Genius can help you find policies that maybe you don't want to take a medical exam, or you want to make sure that you're getting the best rate for your age bracket. It's a good place to just start. It's super easy to use. Put in your information and you'll get a list of what might be the best for you. So whether you're a parent or a caregiver, you want to think about how life insurance would help give you peace of mind for your family. So go to policygenius.com and you can get your free life insurance quotes to see how much you can save. And if they ask, of course, you want to know, tell them that Redacted sent you. So again, head on over to policygenius.com or click the link in our description to get your free life insurance quote and see how much you can save.
Well, Kamala Harris is set to replace President Biden, and this morning we're hearing from Team Trump that Team Trump is already planning to run against Kamala Harris this fall. Yes, Donald Trump is planning to run against Kamala Harris. The Democratic deep state, of course, run by Barack Obama, is executing their plan right now to remove President Biden from office. And don't fall for it, guys. Like, this has been in the works and planned for many, many months. This is not something that's just suddenly popping out of nowhere. This has all been orchestrated. This isn't something new. The CNN debate, of course, was the catalyst they needed in order to foment their plans. Even Texas, Lieutenant Governor of Texas, Dan Patrick, called this out back in February. The liberal press, of course, mocked him at the time for calling it a Democratic deep state run by Obama, taking President Biden down. It is happening, and it's all happening in real time. Moments ago, President Biden announced that his pick to replace him is Kamala Harris. So he's just telling the Associated Press just a few minutes ago that he won't step aside, but if he does, here's why Kamala Harris is the favorite to replace him. That's happening.
A favorite by him only.
By him only.
Yeah.
Well, actually,
my favorite.
Hold on a second, because he told this to the Associated Press. He says he's not stepping down. And however, there's a new poll miraculously out this morning that shows that people love her all of a sudden. It's unbelievable how this works. So here's the new poll. These polls are suddenly off the charts for Kamala Harris. VP Harris emerges as potential Dem savior amid Biden's stumbles, new poll reveals. So here's the new poll. This is unbelievable. Just in time. It's really kind of amazing. Poll finds Biden damaged by debate with Harris and Clinton best positioned to win. Vice President Harris is now running ahead of Trump 42% to 41%, the new survey found. And of course, right as all of this poll hits the news this morning, the timing of it's absolutely perfect, then all of a sudden, all of the fawning Democratic press immediately jumps all over it and runs this headline from Forbes to Daily Mail. Here's just a snippet. Here's Daily Mail. Kamala Harris steps into the spotlight as calls for her to replace Joe Biden grow. That's the Daily Mail. And here's a quote from the Daily Mail. Her approval ratings since she entered office have been dire and sometimes lower than Biden. But a shock poll released on Tuesday morning shows she could narrowly beat Donald Trump in November. It's a shock poll.
Okay.
It is
so
shocking.
All of a sudden, it's inexplicable, right? What they're telling us is that her poll numbers have been down, but suddenly, how'd this happen? Okay, who? Tell us in the chat, who has all of a sudden changed their mind that Kamala Harris is awesome? I want to know. Yeah, did anybody in our chat room actually receive a phone call from one of these pollsters that asked you this question? Like, are any of you watching right now, like a Democratic registered voter that would have responded and answered this question? And said, actually, she's not so bad.
I'm guessing they just polled her friends and family. Like, yeah, they all agreed.
Possibly.
All 6 of them.
There was also an Emerson polling that recently, just today, came out that showed her at 43% against 49% for Trump, rather, which was exactly what Joe Biden's was. So maybe people are just confused by the question. So she's polling exactly the same as Joe Biden, and to them, that's good. They just, Biden, Harris, same thing. Yes, I'd vote for that ticket. Do they know then that it would be somebody else and Kamala Harris in the lead, which I am even afraid to say out loud?
So here's how the Forbes just covered it today as well. Here's how Kamala Harris performs in polls against Trump as she emerges as most likely Biden replacement. So Forbes, all of these major newspapers now, and this morning, news directors and editors at major newspapers and television stations are telling their staff to chase down Democrats to get answers on the Biden conundrum right now, to further support the story that the Biden White House has been covering up Biden's dementia for years. So you have basically the liberal media running down these stories right now. Usually, of course, the left-wing press leaves Democrats alone and instead goes after Republicans. We know that that's the case, right? Even Speaker Mike Johnson today noticed this. Watch.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. Thank you all for being here on what is, I believe, the smallest crowd ever assembled for a Republican press conference. I don't know where everybody is this morning. Oh, they're chasing down the Democrats for a change. This is a really interesting phenomenon. And the reason it's so noteworthy, and the reason that most of the Hill press are following the Democrats around now, we had almost no one outside our conference meeting this morning. Normally, you're all there gathered in the hallways. They're busy because they're chasing down our Democrat colleagues and asking them about Joe Biden's mental acuity and their efforts to cover it up. And that's what it's been. I mean, we could give you example after example after example. It's all on tape. It's all on record. Everybody knows it. Democrats, our colleagues, for 3.5 years have been covering up this glaring problem. The staff in the White House have been covering it up, and so have the Democrats in Congress. Just last month, I brought a couple of examples. Representative Dan Goldman said Biden was sharper than anyone he'd spoken to, and that he has, quote, a photographic memory, unquote. Representative Eric Swalwell said that Biden put many of us to shame with his energy. I mean, there are example after example after example, leading Democrats and noteworthy Democrats on the Hill who have not been in the dark about this. They've been saying things I think most of them understand is simply not true, and they've misled the American people. And this is dangerous.
Dangerous. So dangerous that the leader of the free world, the guy who's in charge of the nuclear codes, can't speak, can't think, can't be up past 8 p.m.
Yes.
You know, as Peter Ducey asked KJ earlier today, he's like, well, who, you know, if something happens after 8 p.m., like who handles the nuclear codes if President Biden's in bed?
Right. Her response was, well, he has a staff and they'll come get him.
They'll wake him up.
Right. But even if they wake him up, you still get the post PM Biden.
Right.
Like the problem persists.
So yesterday, the usually fawning left-wing press finally started asking questions about Biden's potential Parkinson's disease and neurodegenerative disease. Why has a world-renowned Parkinson's specialist been to the White House 8 times recently? And she couldn't answer that question, and she refused to answer that question for his privacy.
We have to.
Others he would have met with.
We cannot,
you can share names in regards to if someone came here in regards to the president.
We cannot share names of specialists broadly, from a dermatologist to a neurologist. We cannot share names. There are security reasons. We have to protect. I understand that.
I hear you. Right there for anyone to see.
Ed, I hear you. I cannot from here confirm any of that because we have to keep their privacy. I think they would appreciate that too. We have to give them.
The doctor.
We have to keep their privacy.
It is public information.
I hear you. Guys, hold on a second. There's no reason to go back and forth and be in this aggressive way.
Miffed around here about how information's been shared with the press corps around here.
What are you missed about? What are you missed about?
Everything he just asked about.
And then every time I come back and I answer the question that you guys asked.
Correctly, you didn't have to come back and clean it up.
I never answered the question incorrectly. That is not true. I was asked about a medical exam.
Oh, yeah. So I can't tell you about the Parkinson's specialist who's been to the White House 8 times, the world's renowned Parkinson's specialist, routinely going to meet with the president over the past few months. Why would he be going there? I can't tell you that. I'm not allowed to use that. But it's public information. So it's out there now. These reporters are asking you to explain why a Parkinson's expert. How many people do you know who don't have Parkinson's or don't have a neurodegenerative disease have Parkinson's specialists showing up to their house every month?
And again, this is not what was expected of the Trump administration when there were concerns about his mental acuity.
No, and Jamie Raskin, you'll recall, back in 2017, Jamie Raskin, he's Representative Jamie Raskin, who said, we need to set up a special committee that investigates the health and well-being of presidents so we can study their mental acuity. So what happened? Where is Jamie Raskin now? Right. Where, totally silent on this, about this. So even MSNBC even asked President Biden, do you have Parkinson's? And Biden responded by saying he doesn't have COVID.
You've been tested for any age-related illnesses, pre-Parkinson's, or anything like that, that might explain sort of having a night like that where you couldn't finish sentences?
Look, I was feeling so badly before the debate. When I came back, they tested me for, I thought maybe I had COVID, maybe there was something wrong, I had an infection or something. They tested me, they gave me those tests, I was clear. So, but look, I had a bad night. But the fact of the matter is, look at what I'm doing. I mean, let me put it this way. If there was something that was wrong that night, it's not like it comes and that's one night and it goes away. That's why I've been out. I've been testing myself, been testing everywhere I go, going out and making the case. The night of that debate, I went out. I was out till 2 o'clock in the morning that very night. That very night, it drives me nuts, people talking about this. That very night, I talk in a large crowd. Look at the crowds we've gathered everywhere from Atlanta to North Carolina to Pennsylvania, and look at the enthusiasm. But it was right after. And where the hell's Trump been?
Yeah.
So
where's Trump? And I have COVID. So I'm sorry, I don't have COVID. No, I asked you if you have Parkinson's. Yeah, I don't have COVID. So this is like a way of saying, tell me you have Parkinson's without telling me you have Parkinson's.
Sure.
Can't even answer the question.
Or also, I miss the days of COVID because I could readily admit I have it and don't have it. And nobody was worried too much.
Yeah, and I didn't have to be out among the crowds because they could keep me locked in a basement.
Right.
I didn't have to go to the Democratic National Convention because it was COVID. I didn't have to go outside and see anybody. I had to wear a mask so no one could see my facial features. None of that stuff. I could go to sleep early. I didn't have to meet with world leaders. It was very convenient, this COVID thing, right? So, of course, Parkinson's symptoms were there for anyone to see who was actually looking. I mean, just follow him in any kind of public forum, walking up steps, repeat falling down steps, riding bikes, walking off stage, not being able to plant his feet, simple things like that. Simple motor skill moments. Well, on stage at the Air Force Academy graduation, can't walk straight, has to be picked up off the stage. So anyone who is paying attention or would have noticed this, or you're just being willfully ignorant about it. And of course, liberals were apparently not looking until this week. Even Democratic donors were just looking blindly away from it, ignoring it. Wasn't a big deal. So to diagnose Parkinson's, you need two things. But the most important is bradykinesia, which is, as a Stanford doctor explains, bradykinesia is the number one thing that you need to diagnose Parkinson's, as she explains. Listen.
So the first part of the exam we're going to look at is bradykinesia. Again, this is the most important part to catch on the exam since it's required for the diagnosis.
So what exactly is bradykinesia? Well, here's the definition. Bradykinesia is an impairment of voluntary motor control and slow movements or freezing. It's most commonly a symptom of Parkinson's disease or a side effect of certain medications. It is one of the main symptoms doctors will look for when diagnosing Parkinson's. So there are four things they will look at. The number one, though, is bradykinesia, and then you need one of these other three to choose from: rigidity of the body, tremors, or gait and balance. This, according to Stanford doctors, and this is, of course, according to any Parkinson's doctor, you need the number one, and then you need one of the other three to make it Parkinson's. So here we have a Parkinson's patient giving an example along with a Stanford doctor. Notice the slowdown during the movement tests, the bradykinesiology tests. Watch.
Because you have to have bradykinesia in order to give a diagnosis of Parkinsonism. So do the movements get slower over time, and do they get smaller over time? Which means you have to do enough of the movements to catch that. Usually 10 repetitions is enough. Tap your thumb and index finger as big as you can and as fast as you can. Good. And with the left hand, the same thing. Big as you can and as fast as you can. Good. The left hand, the same thing. Up, down, up, down.
And you notice the slowing
Very
down
good.
now.
You can relax. So as you see through the entire movement, there's a slight reduction in the amplitude and a slight reduction in the speed. That's what you're looking for.
And so that's exactly what a top Parkinson's specialist would be looking for coming to the White House on a regular basis, meeting with President Biden. So a top Democratic Parkinson's doctor last night said that he could diagnose Biden from across a mall, that he, looks at people 20 times a day. This is a classic case coming right into his office. He could diagnose him from across a mall. Watch.
You noticed anything that gives you a red flag as a doctor?
Oh, yeah, I see him 20 times a day in clinic. I mean, it's ironic because he has just such classic features of neurodegeneration. I mean, word finding difficulties, and that's not, I couldn't find the word. That's from degeneration. That's one of the hallmarks of Parkinsonism is rigidity and bradykinesia, slow movement. And he has that hallmark, especially with the low voice that said was a cold, hypophonia. A small monotone voice like this over time is a hallmark of Parkinsonism. I could have diagnosed him from across the mall. Shuffling gait, we call that, so little steps. Loss of arm swing from the rigidity. When we walk, we have a nice cadence. You notice he doesn't really swing his arms. And end block turning, meaning he kind of pivots around his foot. If you said, hey, President Biden, he wouldn't go like this.
So, yeah. But I also know, and tell me if I'm wrong here, it's very hard to diagnose Parkinson's, isn't it? It's not simple. I mean, I've heard that it can be.
It's one of the easier movement disorders to diagnose. Actually, there's very little other. And I'm a Democrat. I always say about this.
Right.
It's just like this guy is not a hard case.
So he's a Democrat.
I mean, we can't see or unsee things based on our political bias. So this guy is saying, like, I'm just telling you what I see.
Yeah.
That's crazy that he has to qualify this.
Yeah, he's like, by the way, I'm a Democrat.
I'm supposed to not be seeing this because of my political affiliation, but I have to say that I'm seeing this because this is Orwellian at this point.
Well, and also just to remember, he's got access to not only the best doctors, the best medication that you could get, like all of this stuff. And these people are giving him the okay to be out here. Like, this is like, when is this elderly abuse and when is that malpractice?
Right. And you have to think about the Biden that wanted to be president for his whole life. And this is not how he wanted to be president. This is embarrassing.
Well, and let me just end it on this. So President Biden's physician, Dr. Kevin O'Connor, released a statement around 10 p.m. last night saying that the president has no conditions that would render him unfit for presidential duties. Okay. Meanwhile, you should know that the Germans are aware of this, and where he couldn't have a meeting with Olaf Scholz after 8 p.m. and asked to have meetings earlier in the day because they know that he can't do it. So there you go. That's literally affecting, world discussions, foreign policy decisions. Right. So Dr. O'Connor referenced his latest evaluation of President Biden from February, describing him as a vigorous 81-year-old with no major health issues. And then when he addressed the Parkinson's doctor, Kevin Kennard, his frequent visits to the White House, he said, they're just an assessment of President Biden revealed no signs of dementia or other conditions that would impair his capacity to fulfill presidential duties. Well, his family has stated that he has dementia. And Tucker Carlson confirmed that last week, that is a fact from the family of the Bidens. So that is, we know that to be the case. So this doctor can say that and I guess get away with it. So that's where we are right now. But I mean, you go ahead.
Sorry, but if he's been there 8 times for an assessment, like usually an assessment, that's if they're like, no, you're good. They're not like, but I want to come back the next, 8 days to make sure. That just
and I'm gonna come back tomorrow. I'll be back on Friday.
We're gonna sneak up on your Parkinson's if you have it. Like we'll just sneak up on it. We'll surprise it.
We're gonna keep checking it, doing the all of the different tests and everything. So it's really troubling right now. But the Trump campaign actively planning for a Kamala Harris candidacy in the fall. The real question, though, is how do they pull this off? I mean, there's no real other way they're going to do a primary, some sort of a mini primary I've heard about. I've heard that that's also going to be baloney, that they will just hand this over to President Kamala Harris. So we'll see.
It's going to be an interesting DNC. Buckle up, folks.
Yeah. We got more news to get to here on your Tuesday. We're going to be talking about NATO, of course. NATO, all these 38 host member nation leaders are in Washington, D.C., meeting with President Biden, and he's going to be holding a big boy press conference on Thursday, to talk, answer as many questions as he can. So he's going to be on camera for a very long time, not just taking 2 questions that he would normally take, but he's going to do a big boy press conference with these NATO leaders. It's going to be very interesting.
We'll see how his big boy buddies, Justin Trudeau, help him out, though, because he's always at the ready. So we're going to talk about that. Plus, are we in a recession or possibly even a depression? We have a guest who's going to give it to us straight coming up in a few minutes, so stick around for that.
But first, we're going to discuss a topic that's been bothering me for quite a while, which is the relentless attack on masculinity, the sort of feminization of men. This is a problem we can't ignore. The truth is, weak and feminized men are more easily controlled, making society vulnerable to manipulation, tyranny. This is why anyone who speaks out against is quickly labeled a homophobe, a sexist, a misogynist. Well, testosterone levels have been declining for decades. That's right, with a 17% drop among 60-year-olds in 2004 compared to 1987. That's unbelievable. Sperm count, strength in men also decreasing exponentially. 32% decrease in the mean sperm concentration in the last 50 years. That's a huge problem. But don't worry, there's hope. Our friends at Black Forest Supplements with their Black Forest Turkestrone, with their Tongkat Ali limited edition supplement, has been dubbed the feminization killer since it combines 2 of the most potent natural testosterone boosters on the market. Turkesterone is a natural anabolic compound that supports muscle growth, improves endurance, boosts testosterone levels. And right now, look, I want to say, I don't promote many people, but I genuinely respect these guys. Black Forest Supplements is a brand dedicated to bringing traditional masculinity and femininity back. And this product is a limited edition. Once the product is out of stock, it will be out of stock forever. So make sure you purchase yours ASAP. And by supporting our sponsors, you support us directly. Hurry, take advantage of this amazing 48-hour promo. Support us alongside this amazing brand. So try Turkesterone and Tongkat Ali, the feminization killer, just by going to blackforestsupplements.com/redacted. It's right there on your screen. Buy 2, get 1 free. Go to blackforestsupplements.com/redacted.
Well, NATO leaders are meeting in Washington this week, starting today, and Ukraine is one of their top priorities. The corrupt country that lies and kidnaps people to throw them into war. Yes, that Ukraine is the priority, meaning they will take your money if you are a member of a Western nation, and they will funnel it into a corrupt war, and people will continue to die. But hey, NATO is super cool these days. Even they have influencers to lie to us, tell us that NATO is only a defensive organization. Check out this super dope dude who dropped this video on NATO's Twitter page.
Did you know that Washington, D.C. witnessed the birth of NATO? It all started right here at the Andrew W. Mellon Auditorium, where 12 countries from Europe and North America came together in 1949 to sign the document in this building, laying the foundations for the NATO we have today, the world's most successful political and military alliance. 75 years after its creation, now 32 members strong, this year NATO is hosting its summit right here in Washington, D.C., home of the U.S. Congress and the White House, the political heart of the United States. At the NATO summit, heads of state and government will discuss and make decisions on the most important security challenges facing our world today, continuing to boost NATO's ability to keep our 1 billion people safe. The NATO summit is about to start. Welcome to Washington, D.C.
You guys, isn't that so super dope and rad?
That was so
and
funky.
Hip? And
NATO
funky
is so
fresh.
NATO is so cool with all their social media presence.
It's really cool. It's so exciting if you don't bring up the fact that NATO's first major defensive move was to bomb the shit out of Yugoslavia, including many civilian targets. They struck a media center, civilian hospitals, and bridges, including one that was bombed as a civilian train passed over it. Remember that? That was super cool and hip too. Can we leave this on the screen for a second? Because it's funny to talk about hospitals, right? Bombing hospitals, especially when you consider that Ukraine this week is accusing Russia of bombing a hospital this very week. Here is Zelensky accusing Russia of bombing a children's hospital in Kiev this week. And then, so what they're saying now is 37 people were killed, many of whom were children, 170 injured, including 13 children. They're saying that this was Russia's brutal missile strike. But right on cue, as soon as they say this, now we will recall that in the 2+ years since the conflict began in Ukraine, we've seen many times, so many times, and we're going to go over just a few, where Ukraine says Russia did this, and later investigations show that it was Ukraine that did this. So let's keep that in mind because we don't know yet. This was a brand new bombing, but right on cue, Western leaders and press repeated this line from Zelensky. Here's President Biden saying that Russia's missile killed all of these children at this hospital. Here is Justin Trudeau parroting that sentiment. So bad, we're pretty sure they're just retweeting what Zelensky said. Here is British Prime Minister, new British Prime Minister Keir Starmer, attacking innocent children with these braved actions. And again, we stand with Ukraine. 100%, all of these countries do. Here's the Wall Street Journal repeating this. Russian missiles hit Kiev children, right, with this deadly attack. So at this point, again, we do not know for sure who hit this hospital, but there is some evidence that this was Ukraine's anti-missile defense system that was errantly fired against the attacks that we do know Russia was targeting inside Ukraine. Russia admits that they were targeting HIMARS. Ukraine, quite possibly,
which are which are American
provided
weapons.
HIMARS, right? And so Russia said, yes, we struck 5 places inside Ukraine where we knew that U.S. provided HIMARS were. Now, Ukraine, we know, is untrained on these defense systems. We've proven that time and again. And so now some are saying that the missiles match what Ukraine was given by NATO, and that video evidence shows that this was Ukraine's fault in launching errant counterattacks over civilian areas, which they have done time and time and time again. Now, Russian spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said Russia does not strike civilian targets, and all of the strikes carried out by the Russian military are aimed at critical infrastructure facilities. Now, he also said that numerous photos and video footage from Kiev clearly confirm the fact of destruction due to the fall of Ukrainian air defense missiles launched from an anti-aircraft missile system within the city. RT is the only press giving both sides of this story at this hour, saying that it is pro-Kiev media outlets saying that this was Russia, but Russia is saying that these were Ukrainian defense systems. So what should we do with this information, given I'm assuming you're not there, I'm not there? We don't know. Investigations are not complete, but what we should not do is believe that this is a reason to up the ante, to go to war with Russia more, to use Western money to tank Western economies, to drag out this war more. That's what we should not do. If past is prologue, then Ukraine most likely will be found responsible for this. We can't know for sure, but we've seen this before. So let's look at this past as prologue. In 2022, Ukraine claimed that Russia bombed a maternity hospital, only it was in fact Ukraine that was bombing that hospital. Last year, Ukraine claimed that Russia bombed Poland. It turned out absolutely that Ukraine bombed Poland. Even President Biden, when he understood it at the time, said that the evidence does not suggest that Russia bombed Poland. We knew Russia used, or that Ukraine used our weapons and bombed Poland, killing at least 2 farmers, if not more. Even President Biden admitted that, and not before, though, these 2 clowns called Zelensky on the phone to tell them how sorry they were that Russia did that. Remember this?
I love it.
Prime Minister Trudeau, Prime Minister Sunak, President Zelensky, please go ahead, you're online.
Hello, Vladimir. It's Rishi and Justin.
Remember that?
What I love still is Justin Trudeau putting on his own Zelensky accent. He's like, hello, Vladimir. He's like, you don't speak that way. You don't just hello, Vladimir.
His Despicable Me accent.
To all world leaders, like when they have like a big meeting of like the G20 or something, is he walking around going like, oh,
hey,
bonjour. I guess he probably doesn't speak French, but that was a bad one.
That's like if we go to a Mexican restaurant, like, I'll have 3 tacos and 2 cans of beans and some tortillas.
What is tequila? What is tequila?
It's like beer. Okay. Now, remember, this was, again, Ukraine that launched that missile into Poland. But, you know, those 2 jokers decided to do that press op in front of that phone call. Now, we could spend 10 minutes going over all the attacks in the Donbass that were from the Ukraine and blamed on Russia, right? But we'll just say right now, we don't know yet about this hospital in Kiev, but we've seen this before. Ukraine is not trained on these weapons. Civilians get hurt when they use them. Also, Ukraine is run by liars. Just last week, they said that they are killing more Russian soldiers than you think. This was reported by The Economist and then covered by the Kiev Independent, apparently from leaked documents from the U.S. State Department, where Ukraine told the State Department, hey, looks like we're losing, but we're killing a lot of bad guys. The number could be as high as 728,000 Russian soldiers were killed, which is so funny because Russia has not sent any more than 300,000. We've covered this before. So where do they get all those deaths? Where do they get all those death bodies? They're losing the war, but killing a lot of people. How is that happening? And just in 2023, Ukraine said that Russia had lost 250,000. So how did they triple that number since last summer while losing the war and not gaining any territory? Anybody paying attention to the fact that they're liars and incompetent and people are dying?
We are.
Yeah, we are, but most people are not. And again, it is possible that Russia hit civilian infrastructure, in which case we should absolutely condemn it, hold their feet to the fire, and figure out why. But it's so funny that now NATO cares so much about this hospital, but no hospitals in Gaza. We care nothing about that at all, right? Is that the case? That's so funny. But NATO is still expected to pledge at least $40 billion per year Not another one-time package, but $40 billion in recurring payments. It's like a mortgage payment now. The Wall Street Journal is calling this a Trump-proof fund. According to the Journal, the operation is going to be called NATO Security Assistance and Training for Ukraine. It will be staffed by nearly 700 U.S. and other allied personnel from across the country. And they're saying this is going to replace the American-led military response since the Ukraine invasion, or the military, they call it the full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Since the conflict began in Ukraine. And I am not an expert in international alliance treaties, but I don't think you can Trump-proof, or for that matter, RFK-proof this treaty, because if both of those world leaders decide that this is not in our best interests, which both of them have publicly stated, then we will get out of it. But for now, we've got Biden in office. He loves war. He loves NATO. He loves destroying the American economy by sending money to foreign wars. So that's what we've got now. So this week, that's what's on the agenda, this celebration of hip hop NATO. Let us know what you think of that.
Hip hop NATO.
Super dope NATO. What do the kids call it? It's
how do you get to be a NATO influencer?
It's CAP. NATO is CAP.
What is CAP?
I don't know.
I see the kids typing CAP.
Yeah, no, it's Sigma. It's Sigma NATO is what they call it. Sigma is something the kids like. CAP is bad. They don't like it.
Yeah, I know. When you tell the kids to do something, when you tell the kids, when you tell our kids to do something, they say back to you CAP.
That's CAP. Yeah.
Because now I know what that is.
You didn't clean your room good. That's CAP.
Okay,
that's what that means.
Cap.
Yeah.
Well, we've got more news to get to here on your Tuesday. We hope that's not cap. We're going to be looking at the truth about our economy. Are we in an actual depression right now? If you look at consumer prices, it is unbelievable. Grocery prices across the board, tripled in a lot of areas. Meat prices, egg prices, cheese prices, everything that you need to run your family has just skyrocketed. So is this an indication of something bigger and worse coming down the pike in the next few months? We'll look at that. And also, did the globalists win in the French elections and in the UK? We're going to be looking at Europe today, and we thought we'd see a red wave coming through, a conservative red wave coming through Europe, but maybe that's not the case. So we'll talk about that. But first,
we want to tell you about our friends over at Ghost Bed, because, of course, it's the middle of summer. Are you kicking off your covers like crazy because it's hot? Well, then maybe you want to consider getting a cooling mattress. Did you know that 60% of U.S. adults report being too hot when they're trying to sleep? That even sounds like a low number to me, but Ghost Bed provides high quality and super comfortable award-winning mattresses crafted in the United States and Canada. And you, right now, if you check them out at ghostbed.com/redacted, can pair any mattress with their award-winning adjustable base and get the ultimate sleep experience. Now, Ghost Bed is a family-owned business, and they have sleep experts with over 20 years experience and 60,000 five-star reviews. So you owe it to yourself to have the best, coolest, and most comfortable sleep possible. Whether or not you want it at a different angle at your partner or what have you, you can shop Ghost Bed and see what would work best for you. And if you use the code Redacted, you'll get 50% off your purchase. Ghost Bed, again, offers high quality mattresses at a fantastic price. So give it a try. Go to ghostbed.com/redacted. Oh, I was going to tell you about, sorry.
Hold on. I just want to say, thank you guys for all of your comments. We're still really trying to dial in the studio here. We are not a multi-billion-dollar operation, so we're trying to get all the sound right. We're working on sound panelings, all of those things we're trying to fix and dial in here in our new studio. So it takes a lot to put together a new studio, but thank you for your patience as we dial all of these things in.
Yeah, sorry for a little echoey.
No, I remember when I worked at Fox News, and they were telling us on the Fox and Friends show, that's the show that I used to work on, hey, we're building our new studio. It's going to be down the hall. It's going to be around the corner, and it's going to take about 8 months to build. It's going to cost millions of dollars.
Right.
They're going to have multi-million-dollar crane cameras. They're going to swoop down and glossy floors and all of this crazy stuff. And I remember them telling us, we're going to go over there and do rehearsals in this new multi-million-dollar studio. We don't have Rupert Murdoch kind of money. So we are an independent media operation here, and we don't take big pharma money or any of that stuff. So we really try our hardest to bring you a great show every day, and we are working hard to bring you a free show. And we are supported by our sponsors. We usually have like 3 or 4 sponsors per show. That's how we're able to do.
Well, Mindhunter in the chat says Natalie looks dialed in. So I'm pretty comfortable.
Oh, that's
I just want to let
At least
you know.
Natalie's dialed in.
Yeah. So thanks for the compliment. I just wanted to highlight that.
But we thank you for all your feedback.
Speak for yourself. I got my Kremlin check today, so.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then why are your lights off?
Yeah, then why? I guess because you're Soviet. You're Soviet. They turn your lights off.
It yet.
Okay.
I got to cash it. Then I'm going to get some lights.
All right. Well, today Fed Chair Jerome Powell said that he is happy with the considerable progress on inflation. He says he feels like there's progress. Have prices gone down? No. But he still feels pretty good about it. But is the federal government giving us the full picture of the economy, especially in this election year? Well, yesterday I spoke with one of my favorite online personalities, economist Professor Peter St. Onge, and he is one of my daily go-tos that gives it to us straight about what is happening in the economy. And he says that the real picture shows not only that we're in a recession, but possibly a depression. Watch. So some of the things you've been warning in your channel is that we are already in a recession, and a lot of the federally released economic numbers are usually some kind of perversion that don't tell the whole story. So why don't you give it to us straight? Are we in a recession, and are these numbers a perversion?
Yeah, this is the big question. So I think, 10 years ago, you were basically crazy if you were questioning government numbers. I mean, nobody with a PhD would do that. They would make fun of you at the PhD clubhouse. You wouldn't get invited to parties. And I think a lot of that changed, starting really during Obama, to be honest, when the media sort of threw off the mask of objectivity. The Obama administration seemed to play along. They sort of tweaked the numbers a lot more than previous administrations. And you can measure this indirectly because you can just look at revisions after the fact, right? So when new economic statistics come out, that's when they really get the media spotlight. That's when relatively low information voters make up their minds. So after the fact, if those revisions are all going one way, then this starts to raise suspicions. And Zero Hedge has been on that, to their credit, for a very long time, going through the revisions. But anyway, that really ramped up during Obama and then going into COVID. And now under Joe Biden, it's just an epidemic. And so that means that we really kind of don't know what's going on with the economy. It's almost like every economic report that comes out is sort of a new puzzle, and you get to figure out what they lied about, like what they're covering up. So, if you look at generally when it comes to the economy, there are 3 big numbers that matter, which are inflation, the growth rate, and jobs. Okay, those are the 3 numbers that they get the most public attention. If you are sort of expecting shenanigans, that's where you would spot them. And if you go through those numbers, all of them have huge problems, right? If you take inflation, for example, allegedly since pre-COVID, we've had 21% inflation. So anybody who lives in this economy, that is comical, right? I mean, houses are up, 30% plus. Fast food menus, okay, these are a long-standing metric used in, foreign exchange markets, that number in the trillions. They look at the so-called Big Mac index, right? Anybody who reads the Economist magazine, for example, is going to be familiar with this. What it basically does is equalizes the prices of Big Macs across countries, and this gives you an indicator what's going on with the currency. And the Big Mac is useful because it has a range of inputs, right? You have some workers, you have some real estate, you have some trucks, some ingredients, and so on. And so Big Mac prices, more broadly fast food prices, those are actually up 35 to 50%. Right. Wow. And then, of course, you can keep going. Right. You can look at people posting.
Can we put that a ballpark
receipts
on that? Like pre-COVID, a Big Mac would be $3.50, and now it seems like it's $5.50. Is that around accurate?
Yeah. Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's a lot.
And right. And, of course, it gets worse. I mean, people post online. They post receipts, maybe families, for example, they've been buying the exact same thing for years. And they just post a receipt from a couple of years ago. Maybe they find it when they're, cleaning up. and they compare that to today. And there was one guy who just did that. He went back. You can actually try this at home. If you go back on Amazon, they keep track of all your orders. So you can go back and find an order that you placed like 2 years ago, and you can just say, rebuy this. Okay. Yeah. And it'll give you the pricing on it. So this guy did that, and it was something like $120 2 years ago. Now it's like $400.
Right.
Okay. So 21%. There's something wrong with this picture. And the reason that matters is that, so since COVID, we've had relatively slow growth when you average out all of the years, but that's if inflation was 21%, we've had slow growth, right? If inflation was actually 35%, even being conservative with all these other shadow indicators, if inflation was 35%, then we've actually been in a recession for 5 years now. If inflation was 50%, then we've been in something more like a depression. Now, this is going to, I think, strike people as crazy. It struck me as crazy when it was Jeff Tucker over at Brownstone that first sort of surfaced the question to me. But the thing is, if you look back through history, inflationary depressions are relatively hard to see. Okay, so, and the reason is because your assets go up. Assets capitalize future inflation. So when the inflation is going up, your assets jump before your Big Macs jump. Okay, and so people tend to focus on that. They have more money, they're spending more. So you saw that in Weimar Germany, for example, where in the early stages of the hyperinflation, people were not upset about rising prices. Prices were going up, yes. They weren't talking about that. They were talking about the amazing stock market returns. Okay, because stocks soared, housing soared, every asset soared. So in an inflationary depression, you get this world where all assets just go through the roof, and then the prices slowly catch up with those. So I think that describes fairly accurately what we're going through now, right? Between houses soaring, stocks going up, Bitcoin, crypto, everything. They were calling it the everything bubble during COVID. And which was weird because we were in the middle of the worst recession since the 1930s. It was government engineered, but it was a horrible recession. Yet everything was going up in price. It's kind of weird. So that obscures the fact. And so at this point, I think as an economist, that's really the question is, you know, I generally take the government numbers as they are. I understand there's little caveats. You know, they don't count people out of the labor force. There are all these little sort of tweaks that they try and put lipstick on that pig. But sort of in the back of my mind, I take the government numbers as they are. So, for example, if somebody asked me, how's the economy doing right now? I would say, well, we're in, you know, pretty slow growth. But if that inflation number is key, if the inflation number is dramatically being miscounted, then, you know, the way that growth works is that you have growth in the economy, and then they knock inflation off that, okay? And that gives you so-called real growth. So if inflation is much higher than we think it is, then actually we may have been in a recession for going on 5 years now, which would make it the worst, certainly since the 1970s.
I mean, it feels like that, right? And so one of the things I like about your channel is that I understand the mechanisms that are happening that explain what I am experiencing. Whereas when I watch the media, it feels like a gaslighting situation. You may know I was a reporter for CNBC, and it very much felt like we were supposed to repeat whatever the government was telling us. I remember I was reading, do you know the economist Harry Dent? I was reading his book and speaking about this, you know, on the set in commercial breaks, and people were laughing at me. Other reporters like, oh, come on, we're not supposed to be paying attention to that doom and gloom type thing. But what you're saying is that we have an insolvent government that is engineering bad times for us. And it makes, I understand exactly what you're saying. One of the things you warned about last week was government jobs, that we're now growing government jobs, not private jobs, gig economy. We are growing that. And so that's bad because it puts us on par, you said, with the Soviet Union. Can you explain why that's bad?
Yeah, so if you take the most recent job report, even on the official numbers, right? We're not questioning anything yet. We're not going to crazy town. On the official numbers, over 1/3 of new jobs last month were government jobs. Right. And, even in like Yugoslavia during, when the Soviet Union was still in business, there were a significant number of private sector jobs. So, I mean, we are really not very far from communism when you get to a point where 1/3 of your jobs are formed by the government. And beyond that, of course, so keep in mind, that's 1/3 of the headline number. But actually, what was interesting about this job report, this is just a couple of days ago, is that they said we created 200,000 jobs, of which 70,000 were government jobs. But they also revised away 100,000 jobs from previous reports. So that goes into that sort of gaslighting where all the revisions somehow magically become negative when the media is not watching anymore. So strictly speaking, we only actually had 100,000 net new jobs. We had 70,000 government jobs. So this is starting to get freaky. Like, that's a very high number. And, of course, government jobs are permanent parasites. I mean, these are not people who will be producing things. These are people who will be consuming things. In fact, depending what the government job is, it could be extremely parasitic. Like, if those 70,000 people are new EPA bureaucrats who are going to be, measuring the carbon footprint of, some mom and pop restaurant, I mean, these people are like, they're professional job killers at that point. And so 70,000 new government workers could imply many times more of that in, sort of private sector jobs that are hunted to extinction.
Yikes. Okay. Well, I could talk a blue streak about all of this, and I always love your analysis, but I'll get you out of here on one more question. One of the things that I really appreciate your analysis on is what happens to our taxes and the economy in the event of an election. So what do you think then is going to happen to this economy in the event of a Trump win, which is what the polls currently are indicating?
Yeah, Trump has great instincts on taxes. He generally wants them lower. He has a lot of concern for people on the lower end. Really, there are two groups that, if we look at Trump version 1.0, there are two groups that he was interested in cutting taxes. One of them was poor people or working class people. He regards those people as his base. He regards them as the people that he, brought him to the dance. So he wants to take care of those. And the other group that he tries to take care of is business taxes, because he knows enough economics that the businesses are the ones who are creating the jobs, are the ones who are creating the prosperity. I don't like big business any more than anybody else on the populist right. I have no love for them. But the truth of the fact is that if you have very low taxes, especially on small business, but anyway, the corporate tax, if that's very low, then it encourages production, right? The alternative, if you are taxing production, then you are going to have rich people who take their money and go buy yachts rather than, say, creating a factory. Okay, so Trump understands both of those. I think that he's going to keep pushing on those. On the other hand, Biden, of course, or whoever's running Biden, I think at this point, everybody agrees at last that Biden is not actually controlling anything. So there's somebody who's running the country. The media seems stunningly incurious about who exactly those people are. But at any rate, if they win again, then, right, they've been pretty clear on what they want here, which is that 1/3 government worker. That's what they want. All right. They want to suck society's resources into the government. First, you do it with deficits, and then you sort of hold the economy up as a human shield. You say, look, we got all this debt. Wall Street's going to collapse. We'll have Depression 2.0. So you got to give us more taxes. It's very cute, right? It's this ratchet effect. They spend more, especially buying votes, things like, the college debt handouts, and then they come back and get more taxes. Somehow the taxes are never enough. They manage to outgrow the taxes every single time. So, I imagine if Biden comes in, we get that kind of a ratchet.
Yeah, exactly. I was reading Thomas Sowell's book this weekend, and he talks about how inflation is a regressive tax paid by the lower class. And that's exactly what we're seeing right now. So thank you so much for coming on Redacted for the first time. I hope it's not the last time. I'm really a big fan of your show. Again, you can follow Professor Peter St. Onge. Let me just make sure I have it right at Prof. St. Onge. So thanks again for your time.
Thanks for having me on, Natalie.
Oh, it's so infuriating. All the real numbers. Like, we know it. We're living it.
Yeah,
the
people can
economy
see
is
it.
shit. Yeah.
I mean, you can see it. You can see it in the food prices. You can see it at the grocery store. People in the chat saying, yeah, don't, Alex Bunda says, don't pay for produce. It's basically just water.
Yeah.
Like somebody else was saying, yeah, meat up 35%.
I wonder how you guys feel about this Big Mac index. If you feel that it has gone from 350 to about 550.
Mars Gold in our chat. Mars Gold said $14 a pound, David, for meat. Meat is sale for $14 a pound. On sale?
I know.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. And what I've heard some people saying though is like the grocery stores raise the prices, and even though it's going down, they're just not lowering them. That they could technically lower them, but like these corporations aren't going to lower the prices. So there's probably a little bit of that too.
I was thinking about that last night, actually. Like, at what point the sourcing of this stuff has dropped, the prices of the sourcing of these things have dropped. Now it's time for the stores to cut back on some of the profits they've been reaping as a result of this. We've seen record profits. From a lot of these companies, a lot of these restaurant chains, they've seen record profits right now. Are they going to reduce their prices? So we'll see.
I'm not sure that. I mean, I'd like to see the data on that they are price gouging, because I think that those are their costs. The gas
I didn't
costs,
say they're price
the
gouging.
labor costs.
Yeah, I didn't say they're price gouging, but I can tell you Chipotle saw a huge, like $11 burrito. Chipotle saw record profits. So they're making record profits. Or does that mean, though, they're covering their costs just because they're seeing record profits? Are their costs also increasing tremendously?
I'm not sure that that's the case. Okay, well, let's look at earnings in the first couple of quarters of this year, because I'm not sure if that's really the case, or it's just this is the price of things now. Right. And so, we'll see.
All right, we got more news to get to here. We're going to talk about the globalist war in Europe right now. Are the globalists winning in Europe, or are the conservatives winning in Europe? What is actually happening in France, in the UK? Ralph Scholhammer, academic researcher, is going to join us in moments on that. But first,
we want to tell you about our friends over at American Financing, because as we've been discussing at length, the economy is terrible and it's hard right now. And if you're used to living under a certain amount of expenses, and your expenses have skyrocketed under this record inflation, then you may have to be putting your expenses on a credit card. You may be dipping into savings. What you could do, though, if you're a homeowner, is take a look at American Financing and see if you can use any of the equity in your home that's already yours to help you live your life today, to help you with your family expenses today. So they can teach you this. All you have to do is decide, I'm going to learn what this is and see if this works for me. So head on over to americanfinancing.net/redacted. On average, they are saving families $854 a month. So just think of what you can do with that extra $800 a month in your pocket and not having to worry about those minimum credit card fees. So again, this is something that, the wealthy just take what they have and leverage. This is something that we are not taught in high school, but we should absolutely be taught. So just think of it, okay, I'm going to study this financial product and see if it works for my family. So you can call them at 866-890-8434 or head on over to americanfinancing.net/redacted.
So what happened to that big red wave in Europe? Well, we just had a series of elections, and it turns out that red wave maybe died with a whimper as the far left parties seem to have been sweeping recent elections. We saw France, we saw the UK, and now we even see prosecutors going after France's Marine Le Pen. What is going on in Europe right now? Let's ask academic researcher Ralph Scholhammer, who is going to try to make sense of all of this for us. A lot of really interesting pieces of this, Ralph. Good to see you. I'm just really confused about how in a few short weeks we're seeing it seems like a fracturing of the politic in Europe, and now really it doesn't seem like anyone is popular right now in France. It seems like there's a total fracturing going on. What do you make of what's been unfolding in Europe in these recent elections?
Well, I think what we currently see is a fracturing between what is popular and kind of what is reflected in then the actual elections. To take the most recent two, right, in the United Kingdom and in France. if you look at the popular vote, I mean, this is a problem that you and your American listeners and viewers are familiar with, but if you look at the popular vote in France and also in the United Kingdom, actually the right-wing parties did fairly well. For example, Marine Le Pen got about 10 million votes, Macron's party got about 6 million votes, and even the Left Alliance, like the new Popular Front, got around 6 million. So by the popular vote, kind of the right wingers did very well. Unfortunately, what happened, and this is, I think, a very important predicament that they will suffer probably from more often, which is that, as we discuss on this show very often, kind of the establishment, the existing parties, the existing structures will do whatever they can to prevent the right wing from coming to power. And we saw this particularly in France. I mean, just kind of to go a little bit more into detail, what happened there is absolutely astounding. So you have a left-wing alliance that has some of the traditional left-wing parties, right? The Greens, the Social Democrats, so nothing particularly surprising there. But you also have open communists, open Trotskyists, and open Islamist sympathizers within that movement. And then you have Emmanuel Macron as a post-centrist, who rather told his voters after the first round of the elections to vote for the left-wing radicals instead of Marine Le Pen. And if you take a close look at Marine Le Pen's party, and she did recently an interview in CNN with Christiane Amanpour, who, by the way, is a horrible journalist, but that's a different issue.
Right.
This is no longer a far-right party, right? They are in almost every area of their program, more or less a mainstream, economically somewhat to the left, a regular party. It's just migration, which is the big issue, and of course, the preservation of the traditional French way of life. That's what makes them radical. So that's the ironic thing here. So the only thing that distinguishes them from Macron and the left is that they say, we want to keep France French. And apparently that's already too much. That already makes them radicals. And the same thing, I believe, was true with Nigel Farage in the United Kingdom. I mean, the Reform Party is basically the Tories the way they are supposed to be. Rishi Sunak was, a post-national, a post-modern prime minister who pretended to be a conservative, in the same way in which Emmanuel Macron pretended to be a bourgeois centrist. They are not. Their default position is to the left. And I think we saw this now. There is a broad alliance from the far left to the quote-unquote center-right, and they all unify wherever possible against the right, which, by the way, I no longer call the far right, because the closer you look at them, none of their positions is extreme. They are basically mainstream parties that just have a very strong loyalty and emphasis on their patriotic sentiments, which honestly I would expect from everyone who's in politics. But apparently this has become the exception, is no longer the rule.
So what do you make then of where Europe goes, where France goes, where the UK goes? You have this alliance of the socialists, the Greens, the far left coming together and signing up on this, and you have the nationalists saying enough with this immigration policy, enough with these open borders. Where do you see the future of Europe going? I thought we were trending to a more nationalistic approach. Keep France, France, keep Portugal, Portugal, keep the UK, UK. Yeah. Is that still the case, or are we really in muddy waters right now?
No, I think that is still the case. I think what we have entered now is the calm before the storm, because the mask has now slipped in many ways. And what I mean by this is what becomes ever more clear to the voters and the population is that, in fact, it's not the moderates who try to keep out the radicals. It becomes ever clearer that actually the radicals have been in power, and it's the moderates that want to come in. And this is why I always make this distinction. If you look at the party programs, save the borders, tough on crime, loyalty to your own culture, those are not radical positions. And then you look at the people who are actually in power who want the exact opposite, right? Open borders. We saw now, I'm sure that your viewers and listeners have followed this as well, that one of the first steps the new British government is doing, that they want to cut prison sentences in half. So they literally want to unleash criminals onto the streets of Britain, which I think is a fairly radical proposition. And you see the same in France with what Mélenchon, one of the leader of the left-wing alliance, is proposing. He wants special status for so-called climate refugees. Now, according to the UN, I mean, I think these numbers and these terminology is bollocks, but this is what the left has taken over. There are 1.2 billion climate refugees supposedly in the world, and the French left wants to open the borders for all of them. So tell me, who is the radical here? Like, who are the true radicals? And I think this is what more and more people realize. We have been governed the last 30 years by the radicals, and it's the moderates that wanted the government. And I, by the way, would make the same claim in the United States. If you look at Donald Trump and his base and his platform, and you look at the far left platform that is an integral part of Joe Biden's re-election effort, who is more radical there? I mean, I think it's absolutely obvious that the far right is they're much more, the far right is much more moderate and commonsensical, I think, than the left.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sitting here right now, and over my shoulder, this shoulder here, you can see the U.S. national debt, $34 trillion. And when the left, just like in Europe, says we want to spend more money, where is this money going to come from? Just as, pro-business Macron, who claims to be pro-business, may have to accept parts of the left's plans, which raise the minimum wage is what they want, reinstate a wealth tax, which Macron got rid of, increase the top marginal tax rate to 90%, lower the retirement age to 60, and eliminate certain tax breaks and credits for business. So you're basically saying, we don't care about businesses. We care about lowering the retirement age, increasing the minimum wage, open border policy, more money, more money, more money. Where are they going to come up with this money? That to me is radical. That to me is the radical position.
No, and you're absolutely correct. I mean, this has been the big lie, if you want, over the last decades that we have been told that the supposed radicals are moderates and the moderates are radicals. And it's very frustrating. You see the same thing, I would argue, in the United States. We have been told, it's a slightly different topic, but I think it falls into that category. We have been lied to for 4 years about, Joe Biden is the sharpest tool in the shed, and he quotes Plato and Aristotle and all these kind of things. And now the entire media is pretending, after the mask slipped in the debate with Donald Trump, we are still kind of now supposed to believe that the media had no idea about this. So the people have been gaslit for decades. The people, I use this word very carefully, but I think it is true. They have been lied to for decades. And I think that slowly but surely they start to realize that. So I was very frustrated after the results of the French election, as I was a little bit after the results of the European parliamentary elections. But I have to admit, some kind of positivity is getting the upper hand again for me, because this is the calm before the storm, because they can no longer pretend. And I think this is encouraging. Like you said with Macron, you cannot pretend to be, I'm pro-business, I'm basically center-right, and then you tell your followers, go out and vote for the Islamists and communists. That's just not going to work. It was unfortunate in Britain, it was unfortunate in France that the election system is what it is. And if you make these tactical alliances, as it did, right, when you basically had three candidates, one from the National Rally, one from the left, and one from Macron, that depending on who had the better chances, either Macron or the left, that they took their candidate out of the race. Many of these races were still very, very, very close. So they turned three-way races into two-way races, and then very often they got the upper hand over the National Rally by, 1% or 1.2%. And as I said, the popular vote still went with more than 50% compared to the other parties, 6 million Macron, over 10 million to Le Pen. They went to the right. So the right is still on the rise. It's just that they're not yet there to translate it into actual political power. So I have to say the same thing I always say, also in the United States. And recently, Donald Trump at a rally said the same thing. People still have to go out to vote. I understand the frustration. I always get these emails saying, oh, Ralph, don't be fooled. You're so naive. You think that voting makes a difference. It does, because the right has to do one thing. Again, that's true for Trump as much as for the right in Europe. We need to go beyond the margin of fraud, because I believe that the argument that there is sometimes or very often some shenanigans going on, I think that is not wrong, which is why the difference between victory and defeat has to be much larger for the right if they want to win than for the left. Because as Mark Stein uses to say, right, we have to go beyond the margin of fraud. So go out and vote. And whether it's in November, and the thing is, I find it odd when people tell me, I find it too exhausting to go to vote, but when the revolution comes, I'm ready for it. If you're ready for the revolution, you can also go to the voting booth. We can still have the revolution, right? If it doesn't work out, I'm still up there on the barricades with you if that's the final step that we have to take. But until then, I think that a shift is still possible, and this is what I'm hoping for.
Yes, vote beyond the margin of fraud. That is exactly where we've been talking about that on the show for a couple of months now. We have to, if we get overwhelming number of votes out there, they won't be able to use the fraud card, I hope. Ralph Scholhammer, thank you so much for your insights into what's going on in Europe. And you see the headlines, globalists win. Globalists take over and win in France and the UK. So you're giving me some hope that that's not really the case here. We're just not fully yet into a move to the right. Ralph, great to see you as always. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me.
Baby steps.
Baby steps. Yeah, we'll do what we can. Thank you, Ralph. Appreciate that. We're going to get out of here in a second. Just a few comments here in the chat. Someone in the chat asks, did Clayton dye? Carrie says, did Clayton dye his hair? Does Clayton dye his hair? Would you want to answer that question?
He doesn't.
I do not.
And neither do I.
Look, so you can see some grays right in here.
I have them too.
You can see if I have grays in here.
Yeah.
Because I walk the dog a lot in the sun. I think it just gets sunny.
Wait, look on this.
I do dye mine. As you can see.
You do?
I dye mine every week.
Like Santa Claus?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Like I really
and then one
white hair.
Sadul 2 says, I'm an outside auditor for major grocery store chains. The cost they pay has not dropped. I can't speak to the food producers' costs, though. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Back to our grocery store comments.
Right.
So.
I don't know. At this point, my main blame is placed on the government.
Yes.
Nobody else. I don't think that. Yeah. I mean, sure. I'm sure there are corrupt businesses, but I'm pretty much holding Joe Biden responsible for this single-handedly.
Yeah. Someone else says, I won't read that comment, but thank you guys. By the way, we don't censor comments here. YouTube likes to censor comments. Rumble, they don't censor anything as far as I know. I don't know the inside on that, but so we're also broadcasting on Rumble live at the same time as we are on YouTube. YouTube loves the censorship, though. So X also, I think, is free of censorship, but I don't know at this point. Who knows? Ish. Hey, I want to tell you about our daily newsletter. I don't know how many of you are subscribers to our daily newsletter, but you should. It's totally free. We don't sell your information. We just provide a great newsletter for your morning when you wake up, or maybe kind of kicking off your day. You can read it over your lunch break, whatever. You can read it over your cup of coffee. Just go to redacted.inc. That's our website. It's not .com. Put in your email address, click on that you'd like to receive the newsletter, and then you will receive a welcome email from me, Clayton at redacted.inc, and just say, yes, I want to subscribe. You have to confirm it in your email, otherwise you won't receive it. Might go to your spam folder, might go to your junk folder, or whatever. But sign up for our newsletter. We publish it Monday through Thursday. It's a great way for you to get started with your morning. Great way for us to stay connected, because no one owns the newsletter but us. It's not like owned by any of the big tech companies. So anyway, go there right now. Sign up. Redacted.inc is the place to go. And also, subscribe here to the channel. If you're new to Redacted, subscribe to our YouTube channel, subscribe to us on Rumble, on X, just click the subscribe button, and we're live every day at 4 p.m. Eastern time. So we'll be back here tomorrow. Same time, same bat channel.
We will indeed. In your feed. Indeed.
It's
so Sigma. Okay, bye everybody.
That's Cap. Bye everyone.